At 61, the reality surrounding Greg Gutfeld feels less like a dramatic fall and more like a slow, complicated evolution that is difficult to fully grasp from the outside, because for years he has built a reputation as someone who thrives on sharp humor, fast thinking, and an almost fearless willingness to challenge dominant narratives, yet maintaining that edge over decades comes with an unseen cost, one that becomes more noticeable as time passes and the landscape around him continues to shift. At an increasingly rapid pace, and while he remains a prominent figure on television, there is an underlying sense that the environment he once navigated so effortlessly has become more volatile, more reactive, and far less predictable, creating moments where even the most experienced voices can feel the strain of constantly adapting to new expectations, new criticisms, and new interpretations of what is acceptable or effective. And this tension between consistency and change can quietly build into something heavier, something that does not always show itself openly but is felt in the subtle shifts of tone, energy, and presence, especially for someone whose career depends so heavily on staying mentally sharp and culturally relevant. And beyond the professional demands, there is also the deeply personal reality of aging in a public-facing role, where every year adds not only experience but also reflection, bringing with it questions that are harder to ignore about longevity, purpose, and how much longer one can, or should, maintain the same pace and intensity. And for Gutfeld, whose identity has been so closely tied to his voice and perspective, this stage of life can introduce a kind of internal dialogue that is rarely visible to the audience, a process of reassessing priorities and redefining what success means beyond ratings and recognition. And while he continues to engage audiences with his characteristic wit, there are moments where the performance itself carries a different weight, as if it requires more deliberate effort than it once did, not necessarily because of any decline in ability, but because sustaining that level of output over time inevitably demands more from both mind and body. And this is where the emotional complexity of his situation becomes most apparent, not in any single controversy or headline, but in the quiet persistence required to keep going in an environment that rarely offers stability or rest. And alongside this is the broader cultural shift that has transformed how public figures are perceived, where audiences are more fragmented, more vocal, and more critical than ever before, creating a space where even long-established personalities must constantly navigate the risk of being misunderstood or dismissed. And this can add an additional layer of pressure that is difficult to fully articulate, yet deeply impactful over time. And still, despite all of these challenges, Gutfeld remains present, continuing to contribute, to comment, and to engage with a world that is constantly changing, which speaks to a level of resilience that often goes unnoticed. And perhaps that is where the real emotional weight of his story lies, not in a clear moment of hardship, but in the ongoing effort to maintain relevance, authenticity, and balance in a life that has been lived so publicly for so long, reminding us that even those who appear most confident are still navigating the same fundamental realities of time, change, and personal growth, making this chapter of Greg Gutfeld's life feel less like a conventional tragedy and more like a deeply human experience of endurance in the face of constant evolution.